Hello, my name's Lizzie Karen, and welcome to a seasonal episode of Dreams of Atlantis. I'm calling this episode Festivities of the Ancients. Today we have the wonderful celebration called Christmas in most of the Western world, and of course other cultures have their own unique festivals as well that people look forward to. As the world gets smaller, we end up sharing elements of each other's cultures, their foods, and the festivals and festivities. But what was it like in the ancient world? Well, the ancient Romans had Saturnalia, the festival of Saturn, celebrating agriculture, wealth, and abundance in general. I believe it involved a lot of partying, some excessive indulgences, maybe a spot of nudity, and even swapping roles with servants. If memory serves me right, from what I've read, I think they did a bit of gambling, and there was a considerable amount of promiscuity. So a good time all round. Apparently, all of those were actually optional, but it was a very big celebration. Oh, and they did some gift giving as well, I believe. Then there's the ancient Greeks. They had some amazing festivals as well. One in particular, I think it was winter festival of Dionysus, which was all about wine and fertility and enjoyment, as well as feasting and singing and that sort of thing. So once again, a very enjoyable festival. They did have another one, which I think was spring or summer. It was called the celebration of Cronus, or Cronia, and that was all about feasting and harvesting. So they managed to, have quite a few really decent sorts of festivals, and I think that's important for people to have things to celebrate. And then there were the Egyptians. The ancient Egyptians had all manner of interesting festivities that they celebrated. The ancient Romans and the ancient Greeks, their celebrations are just things that I have read about. But the ancient Egyptians, well, some of my dreams actually are from the land of Kem, which I believe is ancient Egypt. So I'll tell you about all manner of interesting festivals that they had to celebrate their gods. The system there was highly efficient. Instead of people having to attend regular worship events like Christians do when they go to Sunday Mass, instead they paid their priests to do all the worshipping that it was deemed necessary in order to keep a particular god happy. So there were representations of each god within their various temples. There were the really big statues so that the gods would not be forgotten, but there was also a special inner sanctum area where the image of a god would be kept in a special stone box, and this effigy provided a means of communication between the priests and the actual god that they served. And they took this communication very, very seriously. They believed that there was some kind of essence of the god that was alive inside the effigy and would hence listen to them for what they heard in their praising and their worship, and would also receive the food and various things that they left for that god in front of the statue. But how this all started is another long, long story about the ancients, which I will probably have to leave for another day. But believe me, there is more to this story than meets the eye. But in terms of celebrations, the ancient Egyptians also knew how to turn their festivities into some serious opportunities to party. One festival I can think of is a perfect example. This is something I can speak of from my dream regressions, whereas the festivals of Greece and Rome are just general history that I've read about. Anyway, this was a festival during the Old Kingdom that was all about alcohol, feasting, singing, the usual stuff. But the unusual part of this festival was that it was the one time of the year that it was okay for a widowed woman, i.e. a woman who had lost her husband to war or illness or whatever. It was the only time that they could ask a male, whether that be a married male or a non-married male, ask them for sex. It was a bit weird, but it meant that even a single woman, a woman on her own, could have one night a year and possibly get a child from it. Any child from this particular event or festival was considered to be the child of the actual dead/lost husband and was accepted by the family as such. Obviously, wives of attractive men were particularly put out by this festival because the men, they had the right to participate if they wanted to. They also had the right to say no if they wanted to, which is fair enough, but their wife couldn't complain about it because it was the festival. I doubt any archaeologists of today would know about this festival or this particular detail of the festival, but you never know. Hopefully one day there'll be some information found that can substantiate what I've just told you about this weird little festival. So let's now head down the rabbit hole and talk about what celebrations did the people of Tantal or the ancient Atlanteans have. In my dream regressions, each of the 12 universities had 1 month where they celebrated their achievements. At the end of that month, a delegation would be sent to Tantal with gifts for the people of Tantal. So essentially, each university had its own holidays at a different time to the other universities. Even the universities that were actually located within Tantal, and there were 3 of those, also had separate holidays. I don't know if the separation into 12 periods has anything at all to do with our 12 months of the year, but it does seem to me like it's quite a coincidence. But I'll just leave it at coincidence. So back to the universities each month giving gifts to the people of Tantal. So that meant that once every month, the people would get some kind of surprise, something different. One year, Tahut University provided the equivalent of a fireworks show. The University of Neath produced a new type of fruit, and everyone received one. There was new technology, new gadgets, new fashions, songs, foods, even footwear, all kinds of things, as a result of what the university was working on at the time. So 12 universities meant 12 sets of gifts. So a little bit like having 12 Christmases, but it was the same gift for everybody. And so each of the universities took turns at doing this. And if something was really loved or enjoyed by the people in this festival, it actually became a part of the tradition each year for that university. So there were plenty of exciting things happening each month in terms of what the universities were doing. There were plenty of other wonderful celebrations as well, which I should really talk about, like the bull jumping events, the sports events, games, the Festival of the Old Village, the Festival of Memories, the centennial celebration of the founding of Tantal. That's a good one. And of course, each family in Tantal would have their own centennial celebration as well, at a different time to the Tantal celebration. And that was so that the original members of that family could catch up with all their offspring. And you can imagine, after thousands of years, that'd be quite a big celebration. And wouldn't it be amazing to, once every 100 years, go to a really amazing party and meet your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmother and grandfather. And it was wonderful, and everybody really enjoyed that particular celebration. Then there were the regular ones, like the birthday of Uran, which later became the birthday of Bela. And of course, in the last era of Tantal, it was the birthday of Japay. So basically, the leader's birthday. And that just happened to be whatever it was that the leader wanted to celebrate, however they wanted to celebrate. So you can imagine that there was quite a lot of celebrating in Tantal. But going to celebrations was optional. You weren't forced to go. Celebrations often involved singing, dancing, specific foods. I can't think of any celebration that functioned like Christmas, though, where people gave each other gifts. There wasn't anything like that. But the monthly gifts from the universities was always loved because it tended to be a real surprise. I think that all changed at some point during the reign of Bela, and it was certainly never done during the reign of Japay. Anyway, festivals tended to involve food, so nothing new there. Festivals today also tend to involve food. But the University of Primitive Studies would always put on a feast that copied one of the primitive peoples. Each year it was a different one of these primitive peoples, and they would create the same meals that these people would eat, including a form of artificial meat, which was cooked in the same manner, roasted maybe on a spit or whatever, and the people were invited to dress up as these primitive types and just enjoy it as if they were one of the primitives. It was actually quite a lot of fun, although today this would be considered very non-PC. I can't imagine it ever being done in today's world. The University of Chem once did a festival of lights, and that became a permanent part of their annual festival. But there are so many examples that I could give you. There's just too many for me to mention. I guess one that stands out for me, though, I remember one where there were these niches carved into the side of a cliff at about waist height, and a path that was in front of each of these. It was along the side of a beach. So there was the beach, and then there was this pathway, and right next to the pathway was kind of a sloping cliff face, and into the cliff face was dug these niches. And within the niches, there were people inside. They were quite big niches. There were people inside cooking. Anyway, the fun was to walk past each niche and sniff out what was cooking inside, because each one was cooking something very specific. And if you could guess from the smells, then you'd be given a small plate of the food. And most people would then go sit on the beach and eat it. So you could go from one niche to the next, sniffing out things that you liked. If you liked it, then you could make a guess and you'd receive some. It was a strange game because you were allowed to guess as many times as you wanted until you got it right, and then you'd get your plate of food. I remember it was a very colourful event. Each of the niches had all these sorts of colourful flags or colourful bits of fabric waving around at the entranceway to their niche. But in general, food was a really big part of the celebrations, because food at home on a regular day was kind of a bit boring. It was mainly just good nutrition. It wasn't very exciting. So the festivals created a real pleasure in the food of the festival. I'm also pretty sure we normally only ate a proper sit-down kind of meal once a day in the early evening. The other meals were more like snacks, just grabbing something to eat, like a small bun. But I just don't remember any other kinds of meals, just the sit-down ones. Anyway, so we're coming to the end of this episode, and even though I wasn't able to describe to you anything even remotely like Christmas, there were so many varied and exciting celebrations and festivals that people treasured just as much as we today treasure Christmas. And that's what I really wanted to share with you, the variety. And it's a wonderful thing to have things to celebrate. So I hope that you and your family all have a wonderful holiday, and I will catch you in the next episode.